We don't like anyone that's super passionate about cannabis, because then they're just using the product all day, and that's not who we want, right? Like, we don't want someone who's like, oh man, I love sativa, I smoke it every morning, right? That's like an automatic, like, no dude, like, not here.
I do your returns better when I'm on sativa.
Yeah, it's like, that's great, but not here. um we focus on the work itself, not so much the industry we serve. And we love people that are detail oriented, technically accurate, have a real passion for numbers, have a real passion for analysis. That's who generally tends to succeed, not always people that are just super passionate about cannabis. But it's one of those industries that's kind of an oxymoron almost, because you want someone to work in it, but you also don't want them really to be like super obsessed about the product per se.
Welcome to AFO Wealth Management Forward, a podcast about finance, accounting, technology, and entrepreneurship. We apply our decades worth of experience and insight into what makes businesses work, so we can help others grow both personally and professionally. In this ever-evolving marketplace, we help accounting firms and financial advisors grow their practice through the adoption of holistic wealth management services. Learn from industry leaders and subject matter experts to unlock the secrets of their success. A podcast that shows people and companies the transformative power of technology so they don't fear it, but instead harness it. Don't fight the robots, team up with them. And here are your hosts, Rory Henry, Director of Business Development, and CEO Rob Santos of Arrowroot Family Office.
Hello, everyone. Today, I'm again joined by Will Hill of Will Hill Consults. Will, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. In fact, before recording, which today happens to be a Thursday, I said happy Wednesday. And when you told me it was Thursday, I was like, that's great. This week is even closer to being over. So I'm in a great mood right now.
All right. It's almost Friday.
Yes.
Well, we have a great guest with us today. Let me introduce him. He has worked at Deloitte and PwC. He is a founder of Green Growth CPAs, a leading CPA firm that offers tax, audit, and accounting services to the cannabis and medical marijuana industries. He's here to talk about the power of a niche, digital marketing, and outsourcing. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest, Derek Davis. Derek, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So we always start out here and like to get an origin story, a background from our guests. Can you kind of talk about how you came to get into this cannabis niche space?
Yeah, definitely. I would probably say around 2015, early 2016, the regulatory bodies from legalized states, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, started coming out with their tax revenues, and they were big. Their sales were in the hundreds of millions. Their tax bases were in, the tens of millions. So, it just felt like there was this kind of underground volcano that was about to burst. And here in California, we had Prop 64, which was looking very good in terms of pass rates. So, started it in, I would say, May of 2016, just started focusing on this vertical. And then I think by probably, I would venture to say around April of 2017, I just decided to exclusively focus on this space. And I had started another company that was focused on the kind of sharing economy. And I divested from that and just focused exclusively on cannabis from there forward.
Yeah. And they say the riches are in the niches. And you've talked about, clients are paying for specialists, not generalists. So can you kind of talk about, the importance of having a niche when it comes to, staffing, marketing, selling, and servicing clients?
Yeah, I think that's really important, whether you are starting out or whether you service a variety of spaces, or let's call it industries. Having a clear focus helps you in terms of understanding and identifying all the applicable rules and regulations, helps you in terms of marketing and targeting. And people do pay for specialists, right? Like, you're not going to see a podiatrist for your heart issues because they're cheaper, right? Like, just not going to work. You're not going to pay someone who only works on roofs to do all your plumbing because they are going to charge you 40% less. Like, you want to make sure things are done correctly and accurately, and people that are good generally will charge more for those services. So it's better for both the client as well as the practitioner.
Derek, one of the things that I hear from people when they get into a niche is when they first get in, sometimes there is a thought, whether it's true or not, it's a different discussion, that they're one of the few serving the niche, right? And I say whether it's true because sometimes we just don't do enough research and we're not well informed enough to make an accurate decision. But let's say it is true, and then others start to pile into that niche as well, sometimes you hear that fear of like, well, I used to have a unique value proposition, but now I don't because everybody and their brother is trying to service the same niche. What are some things you do to assess if that's really true, or to get over yourself in that perspective?
That's a really good question. And that literally happened to me, I would say around 2019, where, when I first started servicing the space, I was the only one. I was, quite honestly, a little scared to change my LinkedIn profile. But I think good quality service, technical accuracy, and just clear focus will always win out. But the problem with any sort of service-based company, regardless of the industry, you will have someone who will, it's just you in professional services, you don't really have a moat around your business. Like, there's no real, there's nothing you can really do to keep people out.
Was there anything through that realization as everyone was kind of coming in that you used to help yourself mentally keep pushing forward as you were in that spot?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we went through like this just this kind of journey of, when we first started out, it was just simply tax prep because that's what the space needed. And then as we kind of moved forward, we then just started swimming upstream. So we would have these new guys, Joe's Income Tax Prep, and they would come in from the bottom. But then we started going upwards to the large regionals. Big Four will still stay away from cannabis in the US. Canada, Big Four will take it, no problem. But in the US, then we just started swimming upstream and started taking from, top 50 firms and being the low cost provider to them. So I think for us, as new people came in on the bottom, we just had to start swimming upstream and being a more cost effective option, as opposed to, the top 50 firms who charge pretty good fees.
Yeah, I'm sure it had to give you some confidence too, right? Like if I'm chasing after this, it feels like it's good. And if other people are coming in, instead of being fearful of that, that should probably propel you forward and say, hey, other people see it too. I'm not alone.
Yeah, and if you're singularly focused, that will also help you a lot more in terms of the content you produce. And if you're not producing content in this day and age, you're pretty much, you're non-existent online. So you have to constantly be pushing content, and it just will really force you to focus more, push more content. And, there's only, let's just call it 25 to 30,000 operators in the US. It just really forces you to focus on, how do I get in front of those people all the time?
Yeah, let's talk about how you get in front of those people, because we are living in this digital age, Derek. I know you can target that audience when you have that niche. So can you kind of talk about your digital marketing strategy? I know you have a YouTube channel with over 14,000 subscribers. What do you, have as far as a digital marketing objective when you're reaching these clients?
So one of the things I learned early on at the, I would say almost it was at the Big Four. I was talking to one of my colleagues who was in international tax. I was in transfer pricing, and I had asked her a question. And she was like, I don't know, why don't you Google it? And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Like, we are the international tax department at PwC, and you're just telling me to go online and figure it out myself. And it was like, okay, well, if that's the case, I'm sure everyone's doing that. And so what I learned over the years is I can tell you step by step how to file your 1120. And at the end, you're going to say, wow, that's really annoying, and I'd rather focus on my business. But while reading that content or consuming that piece of information, you're building trust and rapport every article, every section. So what you can do is you can build that trust, you can build that rapport, and you could tell the audience how to do what they need to get done verbatim, but at the end of the day, probably not going to want to do it. So, I think that was historically in professional services, it was like, oh, these are our tax strategies, we're going to keep it close to us, we're not going to tell you. But for us, every 471 allocation or 280E, these are all terms specific to the cannabis industry. Everything we learned, we just blog out, just push out. And what that did was that created kind of an online community for people that were looking to consume this information. And at the end of the day, they realized they just don't really want to deal with it. They'd rather focus on their business.
Makes sense. So, digital marketing is one piece that's getting the clients in-house. I know you have an outsourced team, and we talked about that on our initial conversation. Can you talk about what you're looking for when you're hiring overseas and the benefits of having that team rather than building it in-house here?
Yeah, so we do build it in-house. We just have a lot of team members that are all spread throughout the US. And what we've found is that, and everything I'm saying is almost like well-known stated, but really hard to hire good people in the US. They jump around a lot. And so in a professional service organization, there's always three competing forces. There's good client service, there's profitability for the company, and then there's what's good for the employee. And these three forces are always trying to just bang it out. So for example, at the Big Four, you have good client service, you have company profitability, but you have terrible employee work balance, right? And that's why people at the Big Four get burned out. And so you always have, out of these three forces, you always have two that will usually work and then one that doesn't work. So, if you are a CPA firm based in the US, you'll have good client service, you'll have happy employees, but then you'll have a terrible margin. And you see that a lot of the times when you look at, firms across a lot of different industries, but they hire everyone in the US, they have happy clients, they have happy employees, but then when you look at their P&L, it's terrible, right? Like their margins suck. So our thought process was, where do you get all three wins? And we did that by hiring a lot of people in Eastern Europe and in South America, where we were able to provide a salary that was a little more than twice as much as they could get locally. So the employee's happy, our margin's still good because it's still less than the US, and it's good client service. So those three forces we were able to work out, and that was kind of our thought process on why we should hire abroad.
And we like data here, so and metrics. What what are we looking for as far as salaries for those South American, Eastern European workers, Derek?
Yeah, so like entry level is anywhere between 1,000 and like maybe 1,700 a month, and then you're looking from like 1,750 up to maybe 3,000 a month thereafter, depending on levels of experience. And a good sign is always to hire someone from the ex-Big Four. They always had the best training, and they like perfect working English, and just really like some really, really great people we have on our team. We're very, very fortunate.
Yeah. And why did you choose Eastern Europe and South America in comparison to, let's say, the Philippines or India?
Yeah, I don't really understand why everyone went to India or the Philippines. The talent pool that we found there has been not like super great. I think for us, I'm from Southern California, I'm from LA, so I've always had like close proximity to Latin America. I've gone surfing there over my lifetime. It's just a place I've always kind of visited. I know when I was at PwC, we worked a lot with the Buenos Aires office, and everyone there has always been just super great. So I've always kind of been drawn to that market. And yeah, we've had really great luck there. We've tried to hire all throughout the world, and it just seems like that's been the best in terms of human capital for us.
So I'll just say that I appreciate you looking at the outsource hiring, not purely from the profit perspective, right? I hear that a lot, like, hey, this is really going to help us drive the margin forward. But to hear that there's consideration on the human element that's there on the other side, I think that's phenomenal. No, there's no question baked in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, speaking about human capital, it's so important nowadays. I saw on your site, Derek, that you offer, remote work, a generous paid time off, as well as professional development budgeting. Can you kind of talk about that and building that human capital?
Yeah. So we're in the process of rolling out, English coaches as well, and just really trying to build up our team internally. Yeah, like Will said, happy team members are more productive, they're more technically accurate, and they're not making errors. And I think in this space, especially on the compliance side, if you get someone bad in the seat, they will make your life so bad. You have to deal with, incorrectly, stated returns, filed incorrectly. It's just the nightmares begin to pile up. And unfortunately, we've been able to quickly evaluate and assess people before it's gotten bad. I think timing wise, you can see within 30 days if someone is going to be a great asset to the company, or they're just going to take and just kind of pillage the company for its resource and not really provide very much.
What's the overlap between building the team and passion around whatever that niche happens to be, right? So if maybe I'm not a marijuana guy, a cannabis guy of any kind, should you not even want to talk to me about working at your firm because I have no interest in the niche? Like, where's the balance point as you get really focused on the niche and it comes to team selection?
We don't like anyone that's super passionate about cannabis, because then they're just using the product all day, and that's not who we want, right? Like, we don't want someone who's like, oh man, I love sativa, I smoke it every morning, right? That's like an automatic, like, no, dude, like, not here.
I do your returns better when I'm on sativa.
Yeah, it's like, that's great, but not here. We focus on the work itself, not so much the industry we serve. And we love people that are detail oriented, technically accurate, have a real passion for numbers, have a real passion for analysis. That's who generally tends to succeed, not always people that are just super passionate about cannabis. But it's one of those industries that's kind of an oxymoron almost, because you want someone to work in it, but you also don't want them really to be like super obsessed about the product per se. We always prefer, we've always had the best luck when we hire outside from different industries. So, whether it's project management, people just love staying on time, staying on top of things, or, human resource people that are just obsessed about making a happy, dynamic work culture. We look for people that love what they do, not necessarily who we serve per se.
So I'm glad you said that. I think that's a common misconception. And of course, your niche is easy to pick on when it comes to that, right?
Yeah.
But like, hey, we happen to go serve, a bunch of people that are chiropractors or whatever it is, don't worry about that. When you go to hire your staff, you still want to, even though you're hyper focused on your niche, we think about, and there's been a lot of push around, hey, do what you're passionate about. And let's not conflate the action of what we're doing and the impact of that action versus what industry that the receiving client is a part of. I don't think we have to try to thread that needle all the way through. And if you try to, it's going to be a recipe of frustration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe this is a question for you, Will, because you deal with a lot of firms, and Derek, you can piggyback off what Will says. If you're a firm that's more of a generalist and you're looking to niche, what are the steps that you kind of need to go through to start niching into a specific, or how do you identify? Do you go through your client list and start identifying sectors that you are successful in. So, I'm imagining a big ship here, and it's tough to turn a big ship, and maybe some of these firms to kind of go into these niches. Will, if you want to comment on that.
So I don't think you have to worry about turning the ship. I think you have to worry about focus, right? And things will grow where you focus them at. So I would say that if I decide it's niche time, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to look at where are we already in a niche and we just haven't labeled it as such, or, hey, firm, everyone in the firm, write down the last 3 clients where we made a big impact for them and they were super excited about it and we think we could do it again. And then let's go look at the commonalities of those clients. And you may have to start with, focus is important, but as you're trying to get there, you may have to start with, let's look at the business operating model first. Hey, we seem to be doing great things with places that have inventory. Okay, that's level 1. Now that we're there, we're kind of focused in there. Let's tune in a little bit more and say, which type of business or industry of those that have inventory do we seem to gravitate to, or does our value proposition seem to resonate with, or do we have reach for if we're a local firm as opposed to being a distributed firm? So I think that's where a firm can really get in. Use your people. Where have they had good access to? Look at what's already in the client base. Derek, I'll let you go from there.
Yeah, I think picking the correct niche will then, it pretty much determines your success, right? Because you have to really think about what niches are growing tremendously, what are hopefully being underserved, and then why you, right? So if you say, oh, I want to build a practice around private equity, why you? There's every big four is focused on private equity. It's been around now for several decades. Like, why do you think you will build out a niche in it, or real estate, or financial services? Just picking a niche alone and just focusing on it may not get you where you want to go, based on the maturity of the market and the people that are already servicing it. So it's just really important to hone in and really mindfully kind of pick and choose and determine which one you want to go into.
Go ahead, bro.
I think that's why it's really important to know, if you've already served that type of client and done well for them, what have you done well and can you repeat it? I think that becomes important in some of those more mature markets, for sure.
And then Derek, I guess when you pick that niche, my question is, from a marketing perspective, what do you do first? How do you start marketing to that niche? Do you start blogging first? Do you start podcasting? Do a YouTube channel? What's that first step?
Yeah, I think picking the right channel is really important, right? Because you don't want to push your content on TikTok. That's just not going to get audience, right? So it's like picking the platform and then picking how you want to convey the information. And the best way to go about creating new content is just taking your existing clients' issues. So it's like, oh, this person had this issue. Okay, let's do a blog, let's do a video, let's do content. And just constantly doing that flywheel of, okay, what issues do people have? Let's blog about it. Let's evaluate it. How many new people that brought in? Let's analyze, and then just constantly doing that. And that's really the best way to build content, is based on one person's issue. Because if that one person's dealing with it, there's probably 100, 1,000 other people online that are dealing with it that are looking for the same information.
Yeah,
Derek, what about referral source marketing as opposed to just straight to your end consumer when you're in a niche, going to, in your case, other accounting firms say, hey, we specialize in cannabis. So if you have a client that's starting to dabble into that, I'm going to be better serving them than you if you want to stay out of it. How much effort do you do in that sort of realm?
I'll be honest, I haven't had very much success in referrals. So I've more or less stayed away from it completely. I've never really found anyone that will sell our company better than we do, because referrals do work, and we send a lot of work around. But if you want to really take ownership of your growth, you have to establish that rapport and that open line of communication between the customer and you. Like, no CPA no other CPA firms really cares about growing my business. The only person that cares about our growth is our team. But I do know people have had success in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, segueing a little bit, I just saw that Ron Baker came out with his book Time's Up, and he's big on the subscription model. So, my question to you, Derek, do you do subscription? What type of pricing do you do at your firm?
Yeah, so we definitely do like monthly accounting services. I would recommend any CPA firm that's probably sub 50 people, 50, 100 people to roll that out, because of the peaks and valleys in accounting in terms of revenue recognition. Like it allows you to kind of have a smooth line monthly income that's dependable, but it's really hard to run a company when income is hard to predict when it comes in. Maybe it comes in March or April, because when times are good in those busy seasons, you're like, oh man, let's reinvest here. But then when June, July roll around, it's like, oh my God, it's the desert here. Like, let's pull back everything. And then, so I think, everyone in a small firm should definitely roll it out, and pricing can be anywhere between, let's call it 2,500 to 10,000 a month. But I think where a lot of smaller firms can find success is business owners don't really know how to run accounting departments. And then, anytime a firm goes into a small business, they'll see just, basic things of not even collecting on their revenues and setting up AR aging schedules, or, just like the basic stuff that can increase their revenue. But I think that's pretty much a must if you don't have that already set up.
And what are some of the big pain points when you start working with these marijuana firms? I'm sure there's a lot of marijuana enthusiasts who, may not be the savviest business operators out there. So, when you get on these firms, what are the first things that you run into when working with them?
Poor cash controls. So, they're, they have all this cash. All of a sudden,
flush with cash.
Yeah. This happened about 3 years ago, but we had a client that had $1 million missing. So it was on there. And lo and behold, we found out one of the partners stole it. It was on the P&L and it was on the balance sheet, extra $1 million in cash, but we went through all their safes, counted all the money, and we're like, can't find it. So, we just uncovered huge cash issues. And I think that's really where some of the issues start to arise. I think AR is a really big issue. There's tons of deadbeats in cannabis. If you can, always do COD. But I think for better or worse, it's the types of people that the industry attracts that generally that's where the problems start to begin.
Makes sense. So, wrapping up here, COVID was a major hit, to many people out there. What happened with the cannabis space during that time? Did you see an increase in the amount of business for those companies?
Yeah, we grew a ton during COVID, primarily because we were always remote first. We don't really do very many networking events, so it just attracted our numbers started to really, we were doing I think maybe 50 to 65,000 uniques a month across all digital assets. Everyone just started consuming information. And then on the flip side, I think a lot of these COVID stimulus plans, people just went to the dispensary and bought bunches of weed.
Yeah.
Sales just
That's what I figured.
Yeah, it was like, hey, we got free money and we're sitting at home, let's buy some weed. And so just sales just really went up. I think it was a great time for those people.
All right. People are on their home on the couch smoking weed.
Smoking weed, watching Netflix. Yeah, that's pretty much
watching Netflix, smoking weed.
Yeah.
Great. Derek, so what do you have going on here in the future? What's the plans for Green Growth CPA?
Yeah, so we're really excited. We won the Ohio retail lottery. We're really applying all of the insight we've gained over these last 6 years to identify and go after operational opportunities in emerging markets. And I think that's what keeps me up at night and wakes me up in the morning, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah. How many states is it now legal in?
39.
39.
I have to look, or that like some sort of like whether decriminalized or
Yeah.
some sort of thing along those lines. We're getting close to almost everyone.
And you guys do Service Canada as well, correct?
Yeah, we have a bunch of Canadian publicly traded companies. When companies first started going public in 2018, 2019, they were all getting listed on the CSE. It was easier than here. So yeah, we're registered with the Canadian Board of Accounting.
Very nice. All right. Will, do you have any questions for Derek?
Well, I am curious, Derek. Do you view federal decriminalization of cannabis as a risk to your business? Because part of the reason accounting firms stay out of it is they don't want to mess with the state versus federal difference in reporting and guidelines and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have kind of like two separate trains of thoughts. One is it won't hurt us because a lot of these clients are nightmares. They are product enthusiasts. You really don't want to deal with these people. So when like a top 20 firm lists cannabis on their site, I'm always like, are you sure you want to deal with these guys? They're headed. So there's that train of thought. The other one though is that the US markets will open up and we'll see a big boom in IPOs potentially. I mean, the markets have been terrible this year, but there's that train of thought as well. So I don't know, we'll kind of have to wait and see, but I don't think federal legalization will have that big of a windfall because states will still have their own respective rules and regulations. So I think it will open up banking, and 280E will go away, which disallows sales and marketing expenses if they deschedule it, of course. So there's some things that will go away, but I think it won't be that different than it is today. And I also think when you look at a state that goes medical or rec, it's not like everyone starts smoking weed. Like, you'll see the highest state is around Oklahoma, which is about 9.6% of the general population adoption rate. Many states are still anywhere in that 1 to 3% of general population in terms of customers. So, it's not going to be like, oh, they legalize it and all of a sudden everyone, buys a bong. Like I just, the people's consumption habits will largely remain the same.
Interesting. All right, Derek, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If people want to reach you or Green Growth CPA, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, just go to greengrowthcpas.com and there's a contact us page and someone from our team will love to reach out.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Glad to be here, Rory.
All right, Derek, appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
All opinions expressed by Rob Santos and Rory Henry on this website podcast interview are solely their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arrowroot Family Office LLC or their parent company or affiliates and may have been previously disseminated on television, radio, internet, or another medium. You should not treat any opinion expressed by anyone as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or follow a particular strategy, but only as an expression of their opinions. Past performance is not indicative of future results.